Hi class, and welcome to our second lesson on factoring. So here we're going to be looking at factoring trinomials when a is 1. And what do I mean when a is 1? So again, kind of going back to that terminology with polynomials. If I'm looking at it in standard form, and we're only looking really at quadratics right now for the most part, but that's ax squared plus bx plus c. So your A term is going to be 1. So remember, these are all going to, A, B, and C, they are just represent some unknown number. The x's, the x squared, and the x are going to stay as is. Okay, so we're looking at when A is 1. And again, with this, I am using that reverse distribution. Okay, so again, here you have it before, x plus 6 times x minus 5. That's multiplying polynomials. When we did that, we got this answer here. And I actually did that problem as well in the previous one with the GCF. So now we're going to go from here to here. Okay? So how do we do that? Okay, so steps of factoring. So the first thing, again, you always want to check for is factor out a GCF. We usually like to make sure the leading coefficient is positive. It doesn't have to be, but if you do decide to take out a negative, it can be very complicated and get messy. So that's why we always recommend having that leading coefficient as positive. And then we're going to factor using reverse distribution. Okay, so again, we're looking at a trinomial, which means we have 3 terms. And our a is the coefficient next to the x squared. We want that as 1. Okay, so what are we looking at here? So here would be a trinomial. You could think about it as a leading coefficient of 1. And then you have those 3 terms with a quadratic because x squared is typically the highest we look at when we factor these. Sometimes there might be a GCF we factor out, but that is going to make it into that quadratic. Okay, so first I'm going to do is I'm going to step with the rules. So again, I kind of mentioned this before. There's a lot of different ways to factor. Some teachers like to do the guess and check. I personally hate guessing and checking. Why do I want to waste my time trying to figure it out when I can mathematically work my way through it? Some people teach the box method. There is nothing wrong with the box method. I don't happen to use it, but if that's what you're familiar with, please use it when you're doing your work. There's no right or wrong way necessarily. We can all do things differently, but if you do that way, just make sure you show your work with it. Okay? So I'm going to go over how I do it. So here are the rules with it. There's really just kind of 2 rules. You're going to look at your B or C value. Okay, so again, just reminding you all, that's that ax squared plus bx plus c. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to look at that c value. Okay, because if it's positive, we're going to set it up one way. If it's negative, we're going to set it up the other. And then we're going to look at that b value. So kind of going into what we're doing here. So we want to set up the parentheses. And I'm going to do this example while I go over it because I think that helps explain it a little bit. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at your c value. Okay, so if I'm looking at this one here, my c value is positive. Okay, well, since it's positive, I'm really looking at one of these 2 things, x squared plus bx plus c or x squared minus bx plus c, because you have that plus c. Now I'm going to look at my b value. Well, my b value is negative, so it's looking like this second one here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up these parentheses. So I have x minus, and I'm going to go over the math involved with this as well. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to look at my factors of my c value that when I add, give me my b value. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to just write down here with this. So my c value is 6, and I'm going to list my factors of 6. Remember, your factors are just terms that when you multiply, give you that value. So I have 1 and 6, and I have 2 and 3. So I listed my factors. Okay, now let's look at that b value. I have a 5. Now, I know it's technically negative 5, but this is kind of my little trick when I teach factoring, is I'm setting up the parentheses this way. So you see how I have these minuses in here? I'm taking care of the positives and negatives by setting up my parentheses so you don't make that small mistake. And again, I'll show you how that ends up working anyway. Okay, oh, that looks like an equal sign now. Okay, so let's look at our factors of our C. So factors of 6 that when I add, because again, when I add, because my C value is positive, gives me 5. Well, 1 plus 6 is 7. That doesn't work. 2 plus 3, okay, that gives me 5. And since these parentheses are the same, there's my answer. And now I have it factored. Okay, well, let's look at why this works. Again, because this is that reverse, we can always check our answer. One thing I like to do really fast, -2 times -3 gives me a positive 6, and -2 plus -3 gives me that -5. Okay, so again, though, if I want to, I can 100% check my answer. I'm going to just check it over here. And how do you check it? You use multiplication, okay, because again, factoring is just the reverse. So x times x, that's x squared. X times -3, -3x. -2 times x is -2x. And -2 times -3 is a positive 6. Okay, so now as you remember, well, I have 2 times 2 is 4. Got my 4 terms, so I know I at least have all the terms represented. Now I need to combine those like terms. -3 plus a -2 gives me a -5x. And look at that. We are back to the original. So now we know that we factored correctly. I really like when factoring is A is 1. Again, if you're watching this video, here's another hint for your quiz. When you're looking at those multiple choice answers, you can kind of check to see, okay, well, let's multiply. Because again, this -2 times -3, that is just this last step here in our distribution. So -2 times -3, does that give me a positive 6? Yes, it does. Okay, -2 plus a -3, does that give me a -5? Yes, it does. Okay, that's all there is to it. You don't have to make factoring more complicated than what it needs to be. You just got to have a little bit of good number sense. Okay, so let's go ahead and do another example. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm looking at my C value. It's positive. I'm looking at my B value. It's negative. Okay, so again, it's looking like this one here. So I'm going to set up my parentheses. Now I'm looking at my C value. Well, my C value is 1. Well, the only factors of 1 are 1 and 1. Okay, if I add 1 plus 1, do I get 2? Yes, I do. And again, because the signs are same, it doesn't matter. We're done. That is all there is to it. That's why I prefer this method. It's short and simple, and I don't have to overthink it. I don't have to do all these weird extra steps. It just makes it nice and easy. Okay, again, check your work. -1 times -1, that is a positive 1. -1 plus -1, -2. Or again, you can distribute and check your answer that way as well. Okay, let's go to some more examples. Okay, so now I'm looking. X squared minus 4x minus 21. Looking at that C value. Well, that C value is negative. Okay, going up here, we only have one of them where our C value is negative. That's this one. Okay, it doesn't, now this one, it doesn't matter if your B is positive or negative. It's gonna always, if your C is negative, there's only one way to set up those parentheses. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and set that up. So I have X plus X minus. Okay, and the reason why it's plus and minus is, think about this. My C value is negative. The only way to get a negative value when you multiply, it has to be opposite sides. So that's why I have a positive and a negative in these parentheses. Okay, we're going to do the same thing now. And again, I'm ignoring the signs because I took care of the signs in those parentheses. So I need to list my factors of 21. Now, some of you are really good at your factors. You may already know the factors of 21 that are going to give me 4. Okay, but for those that don't, if you're not as good, list them out. So I have 1 and 21. And if you want, you can just go, does 2 go into 21? No, it doesn't. 3 does, 3 and 7. Those are the only two factors of 21. If you're not very good at it, just grab your calculator and divide it out. When you get a whole number, you got it. Or, you know what, ask Google. Google can also tell you the answer if you get really stuck. Okay, now this one's just going to be a little bit different. So before, when we looked at it, I wanted factors of C that when I add gave me my B value. Okay, now because we have this negative, I just want to think about it the other way. I want factors of C that when I subtract give me my B value. So I need 4. Okay, 1 and 21. Well, if I subtract that, I do not get 4. That cannot be it. 3 and 7. Okay. Perfect. It's 3 minus 7 or 7 minus 3. That's going to give me plus or minus 4. Now here where it does matter. So the other one, it didn't matter where I put my numbers because the signs were the same in those parentheses. Here they're different signs, so it does matter. Okay, so now you got to look at that sign of the B value. That's negative 4. Okay, is it 3 minus 7 or 7 minus 3 that's going to give me negative 4? Well, 3 minus 7 gives me negative 4. So that's your answer. That's why I always put the plus first. So in my head, I can say, is it 3 minus 7? Because is it 3 minus 7? Or is it, if you looked at it the other way, 7 minus 3? That's why I always put that plus first. Again, though, I needed a negative 4, and 7 minus 3 is a positive 4, so that's why that one doesn't work. And again, the nice thing is, check it. Positive 3 times negative 7. Is that negative 21? Yes, it is. Is 3 minus 7 negative 4? Yes, it is. We're done. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Now, so far, all of the ones we've seen, our A value has been 1. What is going on here? Okay, our A value is not 1. Okay, so this is why you always want to check for that GCF. And there's an error here. This should have an X right here. Okay, so our GCF is going to be, so we have 6, 48, 42. So again, we look at that smallest one. Can 6 go into 48 and 42? It sure can. Well, now I have x squared, I have an x, and then I don't have an x. So there's no variable that we can take out. So our GCF is only 6. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm going to take the 6 out. So I get x squared plus 8x plus 7. Again, how I got that, again, you can think about it two ways. 48 divided by 6 is 8, or I can say 6 times what gives me 48. Either way, you get 8. Same thing with this one. 42 divided by 6 is 7, or 6 times what is going to give me 42, because you're going in that reverse. So now I did the GCF. Unfortunately, you're not done now. Now you got to look inside the parentheses and check, well, can this be factored? Okay, well, first off, I'm going to look at my C value, so that's 7, and it's plus, so we're going to go ahead and set up those parentheses. So now that you factored out the GCF, you're done with it, just keep bringing it down. So this is x plus, okay? Well, I need factors of 7. Well, the only factors of 7, since it's prime, is 7 and 1. And again, these parentheses are the same, so it doesn't matter. Is 7 plus 1 8? It sure is. Okay, again, it doesn't matter. You could write it like that. This is the exact same thing, just so you know. You could write it either way. 1 times 7, is that positive 7? Yes, it is. Is 1 plus 7 8? Yes, it is. And this is my answer here, okay? So just make sure that when you take out that GCF, always check for it, and then when you take it out, you just keep bringing it down with your answer. Okay, let's look at the next one. So E, so now I kind of mentioned we're only working with quadratics. Well, this is obviously not a quadratic, okay? This is that quartic there. So again, that's why we check for a GCF, because hint, we're not doing any factoring when it's not that way. Okay, so looking at those numbers first, I got 1, 9, 36. Well, 1 is our GCF. Since it's 1, we don't really worry about it. Now we go look at the x's. They all have x's, so we know it's going to have a GCF. So 2, 3, and 4 are the exponents. We always pick the smallest one, so that's x squared. So I'm going to take out that x squared. Again, when you're taking them out, you're dividing. Remember your exponent rules. When you divide your exponent, you're just subtracting your exponents. So 4 minus 2 is 2. And again, we're just bringing down those constants. So 3 minus 2 is 1. Bring down the constant. and then x squared and x squared. Okay, so that's gone. Again, we want to check here, can this be factored? So I'm always going to just set it up just in case. My C value is negative, so automatically I know it's got to be plus or minus. So now we're looking factors of 36 that when I subtract, give me that negative 9. Again, I'm just thinking about it overall, so I'm going to list them. I got 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 5 does not go in there, 6 and 6, and then we kind of loop back. Okay, so here are all my factors of 36. So again, I want to check which one of these is, if I subtract, is going to give me 9. Well, 1 and 36, that gives me 35. 18 and 2 is 16. 3 and 12, okay, we got our winner. So, because 12 minus 3 is 9, now we know it can be factored. Again, we want to look at the sign though. Our 9 is negative, so is that 3 minus 12 or 12 minus 3? Well, to get a negative 9, that is 3 minus 12. And here is our answer. Okay. 2 more. Okay, so again, we're going to look at that GCF. So I got 5 and 45. So 5 goes into both. 3 D's and 1 D, so we got 1 D. So take out the D. Okay, now 5 divided by 5, that's just 1. 3 D's minus 1, that gives me 2, so D squared. 45 divided by 5 is negative 9. D minus D is D. Now this one looks a little bit differently, and you're going to see one on your quiz like this, so really make sure you go over it. This is a binomial. We haven't seen one with a binomial. What I'm going to do though, and I talked about this with a different one in an earlier unit, is this is called your difference of squares. And when you have a difference of squares, just to show you, and then I'll show you why it works. So if you have x squared minus b squared, it's always going to factor into x plus, so unfortunately I'm just going to pick, it's the factors. So whatever your square root is x plus b, x minus b. Okay, that's how it's going to work. How does this work? Okay, so one thing you can do if you're used to factoring how we already did, I'm going to just rewrite this. D squared, let's just say plus 0d minus 9. So these are the exact same thing. 0 times d is 0. 0 plus anything just goes away, so those are the same thing. So now let's look at the same way that we did before. Well, I have a negative c. So I know it's going to be, so you see using x. I have d plus, d minus. Okay, now I have 9. What are my factors of 9? 1 and 9, and 3 and 3. So again, I want to look at it when I have factors of 9 that when I subtract, give me 0. Well, 1 minus 9 is 8, or technically negative, so that doesn't work. 3 minus 3 is 0. Okay, so since these are the same number, doesn't matter where you put them. And there you go. So the shortcut to that, if you look at it right here, if you notice where and it's called the difference of squares, because both of these are perfect squares. So a perfect square, remember, is just a number times itself. So 3 times 3 is 9, therefore 9 is a perfect square, because the square root of 9 is 3. So if you know what that is, you can just factor it right away like that. Okay, or something like this, x squared minus 16. Okay, so it's the difference of two perfect squares. Okay, so x plus x minus, well, what's the square root of 16? That's 4. X plus 4, x minus 4. So if you're really good at that, then you can just go straight to it. If you're not, just go ahead, add the 0, and then do it the way we've been doing it the whole time. You're going to get the answer either way. Okay. And if you need a little bit more help on that, if you go to YouTube, or there actually is some stuff in our folders as well in the book. If you go to difference of squares, you'll find a lot of stuff on that. Okay, last one. Okay, so I have 8, 32, 32. Well, we definitely have a GCF here. Okay, so can 8 go into 32? It sure can. So we know 8 is our GCF. Now what I'm going to do here is going to be a little bit different. See how my leading coefficient is negative? We don't want that. So I'm going to take that negative 8 out. Just an FYI, you can factor if it's negative in the front, but it just gets a lot more complicated, and then technically our A value isn't 1. So unless you're really, really good at math, I highly recommend just taking out that negative. And then we don't have any variables there, so our GCF is just that negative 8. So let's go ahead and take out a negative 8. So I get m squared minus 4m plus 4. Again, here I'm dividing by a negative 8, so that's why these signs change. 32 divided by negative 8 is negative 4. Negative 32 divided by negative 8 is a positive 4. Okay, so this is positive. My b is negative. So we have negative 8, m minus. Okay, because again, I notice my c is positive, and then my b is negative, so they both have to be negative. A negative times a negative is a positive. Again, that's why this works. So 4, I need factors of 4. Here are my factors of 4. Okay, so I need factors of 4 that when I add, give me 4. Well, 1 plus 4 is 5. That doesn't work. And 2 plus 2, that is 4. Okay, again, the signs are the same, the numbers are the same, so it doesn't matter where you put that in your parenthesis. Okay, just an FYI, if you're doing factors of your C and none of them work, that means it's not factorable. Just an FYI. Okay, so just a little review here. Again, factoring is just that reverse multiplication. Always factor out that GCF first. If two factors are the same, write it squared. So x minus 10, that's the same thing as x minus 10 squared. Okay, so that is it on factoring. We have one more where a is not 1. A little bit more steps with it, but pretty similar. Again, if you have questions on this because you have to be able to factor on your written assignment, please let me know.